Hi, I'm Jamie Machek, Education Consultant with the Wisconsin Valley Library Service. Welcome to our second recorded webinar of 2021. The only thing more exhausting than having a mental illness is pretending that you don't. This presentation is being led by Carla Houston, who is the director of the Stetsonville Public Library. We hope you enjoy the presentation.
Thank you for joining me for the only thing more exhausting than having a mental illness is pretending that you don't. I'm going to share with you my experience of living with mental illness with the hope that it will be helpful. Whether you face your own battles, have friends or family that struggle with mental health, or you have coworkers that may exhibit signs that they experience their own problems. This is a very personal topic, and I'm opening up my life in this public way to encourage honesty and confidence in others in the workplace and to fight against the stigma that follows mental health struggles. I will offer you information about your rights in the workplace and how I have lived with depression, anxiety, and PTSD. However, I want to be perfectly clear from the start here that I am not trained in any way as a mental health care provider or anything like that. I've simply become an expert at living with it. I have lived with depression since the birth of my first child in 2003, so yeah, over 17 years. I also developed anxiety, and that progressed to panic attacks and later was diagnosed with PTSD. I still struggle, and depending on what my current situation is, I have anxiety attacks, I have panic attacks, and I still have weekends spent in bed trying to escape the thoughts circling in my head. I finally sought treatment about 12 years ago, and I've been in consistent treatment for about 8 years with both medication and talk therapy. Medication has helped some, but that is a really long and arduous process to find the right type, to find the right dosage, or the right combination. I'm also taking anti-anxiety medications. Those have helped me a lot over the years, as they help me control my obsessive thinking. And then I also have others that help me with focus and concentration. Counseling, however, has been really key for me. I think everyone would benefit from a session or two with a counselor in their life. It's a wonderful thing. With my counselor, I can reveal all of my most ridiculous worries, learn different coping mechanisms to handle my compulsive thinking and my obsessive worrying, and especially how to parent my children when I can sometimes barely take care of myself. So for about the last 3 years, my younger child has also developed depression and anxiety, and that creates additional stressors and complications, of course, as I try to support him. So as I watch this child that I love so deeply struggle with his emotions and shut down, I decided that if nothing else, I needed to talk with both my kids about mental health, show them there is no shame in seeking help or talking with a professional, and that as a family, we will be open and honest. And that has translated into a need to do this in a more public forum as well. So I am trying to set the example that there is no shame, there is no stigma. This is just part of who you are. So what do I have to offer you? Well, I hope some peace of mind in knowing you are not alone and an insider's view of life with mental health issues. I also want to encourage others to speak honestly about their mental health, the struggles you may have faced, and how to deal kindly with others in the workplace and your community. I mentioned this was going to be my story, and it started with postpartum depression, and like many women, I ignored it because when you are in the midst of it, it's really hard to be rational and recognize it. I'm also going to share with you how I've approached my mental health illness in the workplace and how I've come to talk about it, not as something to conceal, but something that allows a unique perspective and an understanding of the people around me. In the library setting, we deal with so many people in need, and there is so much information about how to support your employees and your patrons, but there's not much out there about how to develop your own support structure when you're supposed to be taking care of everybody else. So this is my little library, built about 30 years ago. It's the Gene M. Thompson Memorial Library in Stetsonville, Wisconsin. It's an extremely small town with a population of about 550, set in north central Wisconsin. So if you look at the map, there's a little dot. That's approximately where we sit in the state. We have an elementary school with whom I collaborate a great deal, and a really loyal patronage of retiree age people. And we belong to the Wisconsin Valley Library System. We're pretty much the only gig in town, so we try to really reach out to the community and be a reliable resource to them. So we try to make the most of our small space, and we do lots of displays. So on one side, this is on an adult side, we have a new book display, which is always showing what was just gotten in. And we do other adult displays that we try to appeal to different types of readers, highlight holidays, celebrations, different genres, etc. We have one that we've done recently, which we were promoting YA books to understand your teen for adults to read. We face out as many of our books as possible because we have found that our patrons are browsers and they frequently choose their books by their cover, and a lot of readers advisory as well. We've gotten to recognize what types of books a lot of our patrons like, and we can lead them to what we believe they will like. Across on the other side, this is a kids area. So we have our new picture book section, and then we have a juvenile section, which we've divided into easy readers, beginning chapter, and then older juvenile. We have a monthly spotlight on display where we change out the theme from month to month to highlight different books or to pick a theme that perhaps hasn't been looked at for quite a while. Across from these shelves here is our nonfiction section, which again is arranged into easy reader, the lower class grades like pre-K through 1 or 2, and then our older juvenile section. We've just reclassified these two sections into subject classification and left Dewey behind. And I think our kids are finding it a lot easier to use and to find the books that they want to read. Fortunately, this summer, a lot of our kids have come back to the library now that we can have programming and a variety of activities. So during COVID-19, the loss of patronage was a big trigger of anxiety attacks for me. Uncertainty is not something I deal well with. So I'm very glad to see an uptick in our usage this summer. This is my pretty girl, Layla. She accompanied me to work from my first day at the library. She was my constant companion before that and after. And while not an official therapy dog, she was necessary to my daily mental health. She naturally grew into our official greeter in the library and was very popular from her very first day. When I started, I put out suggestion boxes, and I had slips people could fill out. What do you like about the library? What would you change about the library? And probably 99% of them said, what we like about the library, we like Layla. So she was very popular. I was really lucky to have her, and I was lucky to have a library board that understood her impact both with me and with our patrons. Just as a matter of course, I carry an umbrella policy on my homeowner's insurance, and that covers her actions wherever she is, not just in my home. So that relieved any kind of insurance questions they had. As an FYI, I have not found any laws or regulations regarding animals in the library. So it can be made part of your library policy if your board agrees to it and you decide to do that. When she passed away, which has been almost 2 years now, she was so mourned by all of our patrons, and her loss was devastating to me. And it actually triggered a really deep relapse into depression. Having her at work with me had been a source of comfort and strength, and I felt her loss deeply. But after Layla passed away, this little man came into my life, and he now wears the handed down mantle of library mascot. He also has been warmly welcomed by our patrons. And when I have a day off, a vacation day, Finn is the one who is missed. He was very lonely when COVID closed us down, and he would watch out the window for people to pass by and get so excited when he thought they were going to coming inside. I've been lucky with both Finn and Layla that they are very calm and sweet animals, that I can trust them, that when little kids come in and pull his ears or stuff, that he's not going to do a darn thing except give them a big kiss when they get close enough. So with the effect of COVID closing us down and then giving us only limited services, we turned to social media, like many libraries did, to stay connected to our patrons. And Finn became our Facebook star. So he's not just my therapy dog. Patrons bring him treats, and they always have time to stop and pet him. I have people who will just stop in to see him, and I have patrons from other communities that want to come to the library with the dog so that we get some outside of Stetsonville itself too. So that's where I work, and one of the biggest accommodations I made for myself to improve my work life and productivity, my animals. So let's move on to some statistics and some facts and methods that may prove helpful to you. So here we have the standard starter in many conversations, but a dreaded question for anyone dealing with depression, anxiety, etc. My mind does a quick evaluation of the sincerity of this question when I'm asked it. Do I paste on a smile and give the conventional response, oh, I'm fine? Or do I acknowledge what I'm really feeling at the time? Quite frankly, I feel at least one and usually several of these things every day. I am confused, useless, never good enough, anxious, like I'm falling apart, like I'm just defeated and pathetic. It's very difficult to fake it sometimes. And I've also learned that when I ask somebody this question, I ask it with intention. I don't ask it at all. I want people to understand that I am truly interested in how you are, and that they will be honest and tell me if they're having a really rotten day or if something wonderful is happening in their life. I'm trying to reach a deeper understanding and compassion for other people around me. So 20% of Americans suffer from mental health issues. How many can you identify in your life that have depression or anxiety or PTSD or another mental illness? Most of us will probably not be able to name many on our fingers, which means there is a vast number who do not confide in others about their disease, and they suffer in silence. Women are twice as likely as men to be affected, and the contributing factors that result in mental health issues are different for men and women. For women, we have our biology and our hormones that play a significant part. Thank you. Puberty, premenstrual syndrome, pregnancy, postpartum depression, perimenopause, and menopause. These are all facts of female life, and we can't escape them. Life circumstances and culture also contribute to a higher rate. Women daily face an unequal power structure and status, perhaps on the job or in a relationship. Even society itself is unequal to women. Sometimes it's even just when you take your car to the mechanic and they treat you like you don't know anything. We also have a work overload on the job and at home. And some women have faced sexual or another type of physical or emotional abuse. These all work against a healthy mentality and cause anxiety, eating disorders, and drug or alcohol misuse. Psychological stressors includes our tendency to rehash negative thoughts. I don't think I'm the only one that does that. Unreasonable body image expectations, and increased levels of this hormone progesterone that prevents stress hormones from leveling out in us. So we get stressed and then those hormones just keep building. But mental health issues also do affect men, although at about half the rate of women. And experts believe the difference lies in a combination of genes, hormones, and environmental stress. So although women experience depression at higher rates, men are 4 times more likely to commit suicide. This could be related to many men's reluctance to talk about their feelings and seek help. We have built this image that men aren't supposed to be touchy-feely and aren't supposed to have problems or share those problems with others. Depression in men may lead to other health conditions such as coronary artery disease, heart attack, and stroke. And men also react differently with apparently unrelated symptoms. So they may show weight loss, they may develop OCD, they may just be really agitated. They are more likely to develop alcohol and substance abuse, and sometimes it shows as just irritability. Positron emission tomography. I'm not saying that again. It's called PET, P-E-T. These scans are used to evaluate function of organs like the brain. And when I came upon this slide, I just thought it was so interesting to get a visual and from a layperson's view of how your brain is affected by your emotions and the different physiological things going on in your head. So the yellow and the orange are areas of brain activity, which you can see on the right side. On the left side, there's far more blue and green and less of the orange and yellow, which is indicating a decrease in brain activity during bouts of depression. So depression and other mood disorders, they are not just emotional problems. They cause actual changes in our brain function. So you're not just moody or pessimistic or in a bad mood. You are actually undergoing physiological. So as I mentioned before, I developed postpartum depression with my first child that went untreated, and then a relatively quick second pregnancy that really exacerbated the situation. I lived in denial of my depression for many years until my best friend, who lived in DC at the time, I called her crying once again, and she said, okay, go to the doctor or I'm going to fly there and take you myself. She saved my life. By the time I started with medication and counseling, I had progressed to a major depressive disorder, which can be after PPD if it's not treated. This was before mental health care was covered by insurance. Some policies would cover it, but they would charge you more, or it could be treated as a pre-existing issue and wouldn't be covered at all. Then with the dissolution of my marriage, depression really just took over. My brain literally could not find the connection to my voice to speak about how I was feeling. I was silenced. I've gotten much better at that. And now that I feel a purpose with myself and with helping my children, I am much more comfortable about talking to others, sharing my experience, offering encouragement, and providing support. These are 6 of the common symptoms of depression. Now, everybody experiences one or more of these from time to time. That's pretty much life. The difference lies in the number of symptoms you're experiencing and the length of time your feelings last. So if you feel 5 or more of these in a 2-week period, that's the key. That's when you're going beyond just a down mood or just a bad spell to where you have something you need to deal with. So don't ignore these signs in yourself or in a loved one. The sooner treatment is sought, hopefully the less pain you will experience. So I think this is a great image of how your brain becomes completely overwhelmed by feelings that are usually not justified, but impossible to bypass. These are the thoughts that have dominated my life for a long time and that I still struggle to keep under control. Unfortunately, it is very difficult for anyone else to convince you to believe a different image of yourself. Doesn't matter how many times people tell you you do a great job, everything's fine, you're wonderful, whatever. What you're feeling is you're gloomy, you're feeling worried, you're feeling like a failure, you're feeling ashamed, hopeless. It's really difficult to change that mindset of yourself. So it's a daily challenge to push past this dread that I wake up with that, oh gosh, this is going to be an awful day, and retain a spark of hope that today is going to be okay. Depression and anxiety are frequently coexist. So everybody experiences anxiety from time to time again, but anxiety disorders are another beast entirely. So you can see that two differences between anxiety and an actual disorder. I worry about everything, and it's usually things I have no control over. That doesn't matter. I still need to worry about it. Sometimes it escalates to where I really cannot breathe and I have uncontrolled hyperventilating. That is a panic attack. At one time, it was a constant companion to me. It was unpredictable and it was uncontrollable. Sleeping was the only escape, but then sleep was also frequently hard to find. So I've gotten better at recognizing signs of oncoming attacks. I'm still susceptible to days or weeks that I have excessive anxiety and it interferes with my ability to function fully at home and work. And that is when I need to implement some of the coping techniques that I've learned. One of the big ones I'll do is sometimes I'm walking around with a big, thick green rubber band on my wrist. And when I start feeling the anxiety become overwhelming, I start snapping that rubber band. I know this is used in a lot of different therapy situations, and it hurts. And so it completely changes my brain from thinking about what I'm worried about to thinking about, man, my wrist hurts. I want to stop doing this. So if you have depression, for most people, you are also going to have anxiety. So I've explained the origin of my fight with mental health, but life dealt a few more challenges that factor into my depression equation. So I had postpartum depression, I went on the diagnosed, it got worse and worse and worse. And then when my kids were in first and second grades, my husband filed for divorce. Huge changes overtook my life. I went from staying home 100% with my kids to a custody placement where I got them for 50% of the time. And that was very, very difficult. An unsympathetic court system, I will tell you now, it is not a nice place for stay-at-home mothers. So the court system, new financial concerns, they put my life into complete upheaval. And for someone suffering from depression already, it really plunged me into an even deeper one. I was isolated, I was lonely, I was financially insecure, I was packing up my home that I lived in for 10 years, then trying to find a new home, and my family was 250 miles away. It was just an avalanche of things that started pouring on me that I just did not handle. So it's a sinkhole, and I am still climbing out of it. But this is when my symptoms really got out of control and I couldn't eat. I lost about 50 pounds. I couldn't sleep. And my doctor was telling me I am close to hospitalization. So I decided I can't do that. I need to get better. So medication has helped. It helps me moderate my compulsive thoughts. It helps with my sleeping. And it helps me with my concentration and staying focused because I also have some ADHD. And when you lose something integral to your life and identity, like your marriage and your social circle and your financial status, the feelings of worthlessness and guilt are debilitating. So Elizabeth Wurtzel wrote eloquently about how depression affects your life. So that's the thing about depression. A human being can survive almost anything as long as she sees the end in sight. But depression is so insidious and it compounds daily that it's impossible to ever see the end. Fog is like a cage without a key. So it's insidious, and it traps you in a thought process that is so damaging, and yet you cannot find that key and lock to get out. So as Elizabeth writes, there you are, trapped in a cage, surrounded by fog, and some well-intentioned person will try to offer help helpful advice or give you some armchair therapy. They're usually well-intentioned. This, unfortunately, is not appreciated and can feel dismissive and demeaning. You will run into people that are sure they can make you feel better with their wise words of depression is a state of mind. Put on a smile, act happy, and you'll feel happy. I smile insincerely at them, thank them for their concern, and move on, leaving their words behind me because that is not helpful. What I encourage you to remember is that your feelings are valid, and don't let others or yourself diminish them by pointing out how much you have to be grateful for. We know that. We know we have a lot to be grateful for. Unfortunately, it has no impact on our brain chemistry or our self-esteem. Prior to the passing of the Affordable Care Act, as I mentioned earlier, mental health care frequently wasn't covered or had limited coverage by insurance policies. The ACA was a game changer for many, and definitely for me. After my divorce, I was on a much lower income level than I was, and the marketplace, for the first time, based on my income, allowed me to get really quality and consistent care. Other than the healthcare marketplace, many states now offer insurance options that also include mental health coverage. And for those of you with children who have mental health problems, like I do, Badger Care through Wisconsin's Forward Health Plan covers the medications and treatments he needs as well. So please, 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 if you think you need counseling, if psychiatric care or medication is necessary, take the time to look into what services are available to you and talk with a local insurance advisor or call the marketplace. They have people that are willing to answer your questions and that can be very helpful. So find yourself the assistance you need so that you can take advantage of all the options out there to care for yourself. So in the midst of my divorce, mired in depression and anxiety, with poor eating habits and irregular sleep, I needed to start a job search. It was not successful. I had a big gap in my resume because I had stayed home with my kids and lived in a community. I had been here for quite a while, but I had no professional contacts. And then I had these major life changes to deal with. So I dropped off resumes everywhere I could think of. But meanwhile, I was also meeting with realtors, packing up a house, and trying to care for a menagerie of animals that I had, taking care of my kids and looking for a new place to live. So I went around this cycle, worrying about financials, then I get depressed, and then I don't have the energy to go look for jobs, but then I have to get a job because I have no money, and then I drop off the resumes, but there are no offers. It is incredibly discouraging. So I was finally getting some quality care, but the job hunt was long and discouraging, and courts are not friendly to stay-at-home mothers during divorce. For me, the mental health part was impossible to hide during interviews. Everything that I was experiencing was still just too fresh to cover up. And it was going to be detrimental in my future to push it down or ignore it. I wanted to get to a better place, and by denying it was not going to get me there. I also knew that my mental health struggles were not going to magically disappear when I got a job. And so my goal was to hopefully demonstrate that I had enough to offer in a job that compensation would be made for my mental health needs. So when I interviewed for my current job, I discussed from the first about working from home at times, about creating flexibility in my work day and my week. And as I already discussed, taking my dog to work with me was a source of stability and comfort as well. I will admit right now that I took the attitude of it was better to ask forgiveness than permission when I started taking Layla to work. I thought, I'm gonna let her meet her and they're gonna love her and then she can stay. Luckily, that's how it worked out. That may not work for you. You may need to press it by the board first. So a few months prior to my interview, my counselor had me ask 2 friends to email me 3 things that they admired about me. And that was so difficult to do. If you have depression, if you have a really low self-esteem, asking somebody to tell you what they like about you is very difficult. But reading their responses, and honestly, I have saved those emails for 8 years. They gave me a confidence boost, and they pointed out some qualities that I didn't see in myself, but others did. And I had to trust that they knew me and that they were not going to be, they were going to be perfectly honest with me. So as hard as that is, if you are struggling with ways to present yourself in a positive way, try to do this. Your closest friends, just email me. You don't have to have a conversation. But being able to look back at that and remember that, oh yeah, she said I do that, is really, really helpful in giving you just a little bit of a boost in your self-esteem when you need it. These are things I didn't see in myself, but others did. So try to find work that is meaningful to you and also plays to your talents. And again, it will help to see how other people think your talents lie or where your positive aspects are. When you fill out applications, they will sometimes ask if you have a disability, including a mental health condition. I want to remind you, it is your choice what to disclose. There is no obligation on your part to mention anything. I personally encourage honesty and being forthright with it, because my goal, as I said, is I want to take away any stigma connected to having depression or anxiety, PTSD, any of those other things. But that does not have to be your goal. So if you want to keep it private, you can keep it private. Try to approach your job search realistically. You don't have to tackle everything at one time. So maybe look at job postings one day. The next day, go pick up some applications, apply to a few selected jobs, but seek support and let your friends help you. Create a circle that you can rely on. I had to do that because I had 2 young children, and I had 4 friends that knew everything, and I called them my village, and I could send out a mass text to them and say, I can't get to my kids. Can somebody pick them up? And there was always somebody who was there to help me out. So please develop that little circle around you of reliable and people that love you. You don't have to do everything in one day, like I said. So if you need to take your time to go through this process, take your time. Take the breaks when you need them. Let your friends help you, and take advantage of any context you may have. So things are changing, however. Millennials are finding it easier to recognize and talk about their mental health issues, which is a wonderful thing. So I think it is crucial that employers change the mindset that this is a disability or a condition that will interfere with work. Instead, it provides an opportunity to expand your view and become a part of a movement for inclusion and compassion in the workplace. So as we realize that depression and other disorders are heritable, generations entering the workplace will be acknowledging and expecting that mental health be a part of a workplace discussion. So diversity and inclusion, these are the goals of public libraries, right? We want everybody to feel welcome. We want to offer support and help to anybody who needs it. So don't be too wary about mentioning that to prospective employers if there's some pushback against you needing some accommodation in hours or where you work or how you work. When you can empathize with people, your patrons, your community, that will increase the validity of the library's goal. You will be a face that people can look to and say, she will understand or he will understand. So through luck or miracle, I don't know, I landed my job at the library I am now at. It is my was my first library job. That's not what I went to school for. And I am not ashamed to admit some questions that I was asked in the interview were very difficult. And I wasn't sure at all how I came across to the board after I left that interview. Luckily, they thought I had something to bring to the job, and my job hunt, thankfully, could end. At this point, my divorce was nearly complete, and I developed some new and strange symptoms. I had weird fears. They made perfect sense to me, but to anybody else, it's weird. I hate mail. I hate going to the mailbox. The physical act of walking to the mailbox and getting mail is very, very stressful for me. It sounds so weird, I know, but during a divorce, you get a lot of uncomfortable mail from the courts, from lawyers, from exes, and for me, it created a real stressor. I also had these odd dreams, the hypnagogic and hypnopompic. They're called parasomnia. And mine were hypnopompic, which means they would occur as I was leaving REM sleep early in the morning. They are extraordinarily vivid, almost like a hallucination. It's different from other dreams in that you remember it by detail and it stays with you. And they're never fun and happy dreams. They're usually bringing up some of the pain that you're feeling and one of the experiences you went through, or a certain day that was really bad. So that's what those are, and they're really weird, I'll tell you that. So I found that just as I'm starting a new job, at the same time I'm moving, and I'm still coming to terms with the split placement of my kids, I got a new diagnosis from my counselor that kind of explained all of these other things, and that was of PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. Oops. So that was a really uncomfortable diagnosis for me, and it took a long time to understand and accept it. Not just military veterans or survivors of assault and other crimes or traumatic accidents have PTSD, and that was really difficult to come to terms with. I did not think I was allowed that diagnosis, that I hadn't been through anything bad enough, like somebody who had been in a war had experienced. But my divorce was extremely traumatic and very unexpected event, and my reactions followed the course of classic PTSD. Luckily, in the library setting, I found a home. It was just enough personal contact to keep me from becoming a total hermit, yet enough solitude to satisfy my naturally introverted personality. The best part is I get to talk about one of my favorite topics, books, and then I have my dog and I get to talk about him or her. And I also, what this is all about is about 25 years ago, we were discussing my career plans with my parents, and I was not sure what I wanted to do. And my dad said, Carla, why don't you go work in a library? And I said, no, I don't want to. So now I had called my dad after I got my job, and I'd been in it in a few months, and I realized that it was really a perfect situation for me, and say, Dad, you were right. I should have listened. So in our job as librarians, we wear many, many hats, and sometimes we need to take them off and take care of ourselves. For those with depression, anxiety, or other issues, we need more than suggestions for self-care. We need more than a bubble bath or an hour to read or something, go get a manicure. We need more than that. We need real understanding and acceptance and the opportunity to adjust our workday so that we can be at our best, because our best is pretty darn good. Because there are always black holes waiting to swallow us up when you have depression. For me, losing Layla was my most recent one, but I know there are others that lay ahead and wait for me. Knowing I have a work situation that will allow me to coordinate my responsibilities so that I can remain productive while caring for myself makes me very lucky. I realize that not everybody is going to be able to find that, but I hope everybody eventually can. I know my kids are growing up and they're going to be moving off on their own. My parents are aging. I worry about them. I worried extraordinarily about them during COVID because they are in their mid 80s and they are right there in that age group that is susceptible. So what I want to say is I encourage anybody who faces mental challenges to think about ways they will handle those times in the future, and to start talking about and implementing methods they will need to use to get through them. Don't wait until you're there to deal with it. You have a game plan. So take some time to look at the ADA, that's the Americans with Disabilities Act, and how it defines a disability. So this is any physical or mental impairment that subsequently limits one or more activities. There are protections against discrimination for mental health impairments and requires some accommodations for employees. So they're, depending on the size of where you work, the accommodations and requirements are different. So consider that. But for your own sake, do the research and be willing to advocate for yourself. Stand up for yourself. I've had lots of experience advocating for my son through his life. And now I've had to change that mindset to doing it for me. So try to find the strategies that are going to work for you. And that may mean that you have to make some compensations of your own. So try to define what you are going to need to be the best at your job. And so, as I said, the size of your library will affect what is required by law. So think about what you are willing to sacrifice to get those necessary accommodations and what you can live without. For me, I have sacrificed pay. I work at a lower paid job in a library that I really like, that allows me to take care of my kids and myself first. We are a very strong family first library. I could have applied for jobs at bigger libraries and earned more money and worked 9 to 5, some nights, some weekends, and known that that would not be good for me. Make sure that your employees as well have at least enough information that they understand what you're dealing with. You don't have to share everything with them, but they do deserve at least some knowledge of why days work out the way they do, why scheduling is working out the way it is. And make sure that you are prepared to treat everyone equally, because if you have an employee who is having the issues, make sure that what you're offering them, you offer everybody. So I take mental health days where I might come into work or I might not. And my employee, I just have one, but I made it clear from the very beginning that these are allowed to him too. We always have work that we can do online at home. So if he feels like it's a day that he just needs a break, he can stay home and he can do some online work, and that's fine with me. I can do the same thing. So I try to keep everything really equal, because I don't want anyone to feel like they can't express their needs and think that I won't try as hard as I can to make compensations for them as well. So for myself, I've created a work life that allows for good and bad days. These are a few use. So there's this little space in my workroom where you can lie down and nobody can see you. And I can lay there and I can stretch, I can do a little yoga, I can deep breathe, whatever. And it just lets me decompress a little bit. I also have arranged it so there's always stuff, planning or different job activities that can be done at home if it's necessary. As I said, we have mental health days, and we will either make up the hours at another time or we'll work at home. And I also allow flexibility for last minute schedule changes. Now, this one was really important to me when my children were younger, because if I got a call that they were sick, I knew it was on me to take care of them, that their dad was not going to be able to do it. So I needed to be able to call up my employee and say, my kid is sick. I have to go pick him up from school. Can you come in? And I've been lucky, extraordinarily lucky, with hiring people that have very kind hearts and understanding, and were happy to be flexible with me. I was also flexible with them. I tried my best that if they were like, whoops, things are running out of haywire for me, can you fill in? That I always said yes. I tried to offer lots of positive encouragement and support. I always, if something is commented on by a patron or by a board member that they really like in the library, if I didn't do it, I make sure to say, Mason did that. Isn't he great? I give credit where credit is due, and then you'll be able to develop that employer-employee relationship where you are happy to do things for each other instead of feeling competitive. I also have the support of my board, which once again, I'm very lucky to have. We are a family first organization, and family includes our own self-help. And I'm able to communicate with them and get some caring back from them. If your board is not on this page with you, I would suggest that you try to gently educate them on what libraries are for and why librarians need to take care of themselves, because there is a lot of stress going on in our jobs. And most people don't know that. They don't see it. It really looks like we check out books and read. And I've even had my own child say, Mom, I had no idea you did so much at the library, because I'm talking about listing off the things to them that I got to get done. So, do some research and find some situations, or have your board member listen to this webinar, because when you have them on your side, you're in a much better place. So these are a few of the resources that I mentioned, and the websites where you can find information. The Family and Medical Leave Act, the Americans with Disabilities Act. There's the U.S. Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. The National Alliance on Mental Health has tons of good information. And then the Marketplace Insurance. If you go to that website, it will also give you a phone number where you can call for help, or a local insurance agent can also offer you help. If you like to listen to podcasts, there are some really good podcasts out there that you can search for. Just look under depression, anxiety, mental health. And there are some good books. There's lots of bad books about it, but there are a few good books out there too. So you can do a search in your library and see what you can find to take home and read. I'm finding some books on ADHD and how that contributes to all these other mental issues. Really a helpful read for both me and for understanding my child, who also has ADHD. So repeat after me. My mental health problems are real and they are valid. I will not judge myself for the bad days when I can barely get out of bed. I will not judge myself. I will not make myself feel worse because someone else appears to be handling their mental illness better than I am handling mine. Recovery is not a competition. Do not think that your problems aren't valid, that your feelings aren't valid, that you have it too good to feel bad. You are valid in your feelings, and you are owed the respect and compassion to deal with them. So thank you very much for joining me this morning. My contact information will be released with the webinar, and I hope that I've given you some helpful advice, or at least maybe entertained you for a little while, and gave you insight to what it's like for someone with some mental health issues in case you've never had to experience that before, and educated you just a little bit on what we go through. Thank you.
Hi, and I hope you enjoyed the presentation. What I'd like to do now is take the next 10 minutes and cover the following bullet points on your screen. What are 3 takeaways from this presentation that you can do to support your own mental health? Number 2, how does your own library's organizational culture support positive mental health? Do you have good habits in your library? Do you take breaks? Are you a supportive staff around one another? And finally, does your library board policy address mental illness? Does it cover things like sick days or mental health days or ways to make up hours if needed? So take some time and think about and jot down some notes about these questions. If you completed this webinar in full, it is available for 1 contact hour in Category B as part of Wisconsin Public Library certification. Also, there is a survey link in the description box, and we would appreciate you taking a few minutes to complete it. We always value your feedback. Again, thank you for viewing today's WVLS recorded webinar, and we'll see you next time. So long.